Welcome, everyone. I'm your host, Mr.Night-Terror. In the shadows of the night, where darkness dances with fear, welcome to a world of chilling tales that will haunt your dreams and send shivers down your spine. Subscribe to my channel and join me as we embark on this haunting adventure together. But beware, once you enter this realm, there's no turning back. The propellers of the helicopter thrummed in rhythm with my heartbeat as we soared over the pristine wilderness of Northern California National Park. My eyes were fixed on the expanse of forest below, a sea of green that stretched as far as I could see. This was it, the beginning of my new life as a fire lookout ranger. Beside me, Captain Jim Montgomery, a seasoned ranger with a rugged demeanor, glanced my way and shouted over the noise, "You ready for this, Kyle?" I nodded, a mix of excitement and nerves coursing through me. "Definitely ready, Jim." As the helicopter descended toward a clearing, I caught sight of the lookout tower, a tall, solitary structure perched atop a mountain peak. There were no roads leading here. The only access was by air. Once we landed, Jim helped me gather my belongings. "Let's get you settled in then." Jim motioned toward the tower, leading the way as we began our ascent up the steep wooden steps. Every creak and groan of the structure beneath our feet seemed to echo through the surrounding forest, a constant reminder of the isolation that awaited me in my new post. "Here's your new home," Jim said as we reached the top, pushing open the door to reveal the compact space within. It wasn't much to look at, just a small room with a bed, stove, and a table crowded with various radios and monitoring equipment, but the expansive view from the windows was breathtaking. From this vantage point, I could see for miles in every direction, the vast expanse of wilderness stretching out before me like a living tapestry. "You got everything you need in here," Jim continued, gesturing to the supplies neatly arranged on the shelves against one wall. "Food, water, first aid kit, fire extinguisher, you name it. You'll have a resupply delivered to you once a week by helicopter, and to take away any trash you have," said Jim. "Thanks, Captain," I said, my mind already racing with thoughts of how I would tackle the responsibilities that came with this position. I knew that I had a lot to learn, but I was eager to prove myself, to show everyone that I was worthy of the trust they had placed in me. "Listen, Kyle," Jim began, his voice taking on a more serious tone. "This job might seem straightforward, but it's not without its challenges. You'll be spending long hours up here, alone, and there's no guarantee that help will be close by if you need it. It's important that you stay alert, follow protocol, and never hesitate to call for backup if something doesn't feel right." "I understand, sir," I replied, nodding solemnly. I appreciated Jim's candor, and I knew that he wouldn't sugarcoat the reality of my situation. This was a serious job, after all, one with potentially life-saving consequences. "Good." Jim gave me a nod of approval. "Now let me show you how to use the radio equipment. Communication is key when you're out here. You'll be in contact with Stu Henderson. He's the closest ranger to you. He's in Tower 7, about 15 miles away. Let's get in contact and introduce yourself." Jim took the CB. "Stu, this is Captain Montgomery, over." Stu responded, "Captain, I got you Lima Charlie." "Stu, I want to introduce to you our newest ranger, Kyle Brooks." He handed me the CB and I said, "Hi, Stu, it's nice to meet you." Stu said, "Hey, Kyle, welcome aboard. I look forward to working with you. Don't hesitate to contact me if you need any help or just to chat. It can get pretty lonely up here." "Thanks, Stu," I said. "That means a lot. I look forward to working with you as well." Over and out. For the next hour, Jim patiently walked me through the various devices, explaining their functions and demonstrating proper usage. His expertise was evident, and I couldn't help but feel reassured knowing that someone as experienced as him was watching over the park. By the time we were finished, I felt confident in my ability to handle any situation that might arise during my tenure as a fire lookout ranger. "All right, Kyle," Jim said, clasping me on the shoulder. "I'll leave you to get settled in. Just remember, keep your eyes open and stay vigilant. We're counting on you." "Thank you, Jim," I replied, my voice filled with gratitude. "I won't let you down." Jim offered me one last nod before descending the tower steps, leaving me alone with my thoughts as I gazed out at the horizon. We shared a friendly wave as he boarded the helo, taking off into the sunset. The sun was beginning to dip below the tree line, casting long shadows across the forest floor and bathing the world in a golden glow. Taking a deep breath, I said to myself, "So it begins." The first day passed in a blur of unpacking, arranging, and exploring the tower. I made my bed, fluffing the pillows in a way that hinted at some level of domesticity. That's when I noticed it, a corner of plastic peeking out from under the mattress. Curiosity piqued. I pulled it out, finding a plastic bag taped underneath. Inside was a folded piece of paper with words scrawled in faded ink. 10 rules for survival, I murmured, my eyes narrowing as I read the list. 1. Trust your instincts, even when they defy logic. 2. Always keep the lantern burning outside the tower, even on the brightest nights. 3. If you hear the radio turn on between the hours of 2 and 4 a.m., don't answer it. 4. If you hear someone screaming for help after midnight, do not go out to investigate under any circumstances. 5. Ignore any taps or knocks on the window above your bed. If you look, it's been nice knowing you. 6. If you encounter a vacant campsite with a burning fire after dusk, run as fast as you can back to your tower and don't look back. 7. If you hear something coming up the steps at night, hide under your bed immediately and don't make a sound. It is the Top Hat Man. He will come in, look around, then leave. 8. The old trail is safer than the new path. Use the old trail to travel between towers, but only use it during the day. At night, it won't matter. 9. Pay attention to the birds. They sense what you can't see. The 10th rule was torn away, leaving a jagged edge and an unsettling void in the list. Goosebumps prickled my skin as I reread the rules. They were cryptic, almost poetic, yet held an air of foreboding. Why were these rules so essential for survival? And what was the missing 10th rule? I shook off the unease settling in my chest. Folding the paper and tucking it into my pocket, I continued with my tasks, trying to shake off the eerie feeling that had crept over me. But who is the Top Hat Man? This has to be some kind of prank to scare the new guy, I thought to myself. The 10th rule was torn away, and the absence left an eerie void. I tried to shake off the feeling of unease, chalking it up to an old ranger's sense of humor or superstition. Yet the rules seemed to resonate with the very atmosphere of the tower. My eyes drifted to the panoramic windows, the forest beyond them cloaked in shadows as night fell. Hours passed, and as the darkness deepened, the lantern I had placed outside cast a soft, flickering glow. I was reading by the dim light when I heard the sound of the CB radio crackling to life on its own. Glancing at the clock, it was 2:15 a.m. Remembering the 3rd rule, I hesitated, then chose not to answer. The static-filled voices murmured for a while before fading away. I sat paralyzed in fear, wondering if this was true or just a coincidence. Perhaps the radio just comes on between those hours anyways, and it was an easy bait to scare the dumb new guy. I finished reading over the training manual that I was given by Captain Montgomery, and just as I was about to climb into bed, a distant scream echoed through the darkness. It was chilling, filled with desperation and pain, crying for help. My heart raced, but I recalled the 4th rule. Don't go out to investigate after midnight under any circumstances. Clutching the edge of the bed, I fought the urge to rush out and help. Eventually, the scream ceased, leaving an unsettling stillness in its wake. As I lay in bed, struggling to sleep, a faint tapping echoed from above. I froze, my mind racing as I remembered the 5th rule. Ignoring the sound, I kept my gaze fixed on the ceiling. The tapping persisted for a few moments before fading away. The night wore on, and despite my unease, exhaustion finally pulled me into a restless sleep. The morning sun bathed the lookout tower in a warm glow as I went about my routine tasks. I checked the equipment, scanned the horizon for signs of smoke, and logged the weather conditions. The events of the previous night still lingering fresh in my memory, just a collection of eerie rules and unsettling experiences. As the days turned into weeks, with nothing strange happening, I started to feel more at ease. The tower became my sanctuary. I settled into the rhythm of the solitary life, finding a strange comfort in the rules that had initially unnerved me. The forest, once an enigma, started to feel like a familiar friend. Yet the rules remained a constant reminder that there was more to this place than met the eye. One night, as I sat at my desk, the air outside grew cold and brittle. Strange cracking noises echoed through the darkness. Goosebumps prickled my skin as I remembered the first rule: trust your instincts, even when they defy logic. Instinctively, I stayed inside the tower, resisting the urge to investigate. Minutes stretched into an eternity as the cracks and snaps grew louder, closer. Then, as suddenly as they had started, they ceased. Only the next day did I find out that a massive tree branch had fallen nearby, just yards from the tower. Feeling kind of relieved that's all it was, I went about my day checking and maintaining the trails for hikers. Although nothing has happened in the past few weeks, I still followed the rules, burning them into my memory just in case. But the following night, I ventured outside to fulfill the second rule: always keep the lantern burning outside the tower, even on the brightest nights. The moon was full, casting an ethereal glow over the landscape. I lit the lantern and placed it near the edge of the clearing. The flickering light danced in the darkness, its feeble glow a small beacon against the night. As I turned to head back inside, I caught a glimpse of movement in the corner of my eye. A figure, tall and slender, draped in shadow, stood at the edge of the forest. I couldn't really make out what it was. I just chalked it up as a deer or something. The next evening, as the sun started to dip below the horizon, casting a warm orange hue over the landscape, I settled into the familiar routine of monitoring the forest from my lookout tower. The crackling of the CB radio broke the tranquility, Stu's voice cutting through the static. "Hey Kyle, you there?" I picked up the radio. "Yeah, Stu, I'm here. What's up?" "There's been reports of a campsite about a mile away from your tower. They have a campfire burning. It's a no-fire season. Mind going over there to tell them they have to put out the fire and issue a citation as well." I glanced out the window in the direction Stu had indicated. The sun was setting, and the forest was casting long shadows. A shiver ran down my spine, but I reminded myself of the camaraderie among rangers. "Sure thing, Stu. I'll head over now." After hanging up the radio, I grabbed a flashlight and headed down the tower steps. The forest had taken on an eerie quality under the orange-filled sky, the rustling leaves and distant calls of animals creating an unsettling symphony. With each step, my unease grew, and I kept my hand close to the radio on my belt. The forest floor was uneven, and I stumbled over roots and rocks as I made my way through the underbrush. My heart raced as the distance between me and the tower increased. I reached the campsite. I searched around, but I didn't see anyone. I called out, "Hello, is anyone here?" It was starting to get darker now, remembering the sixth rule. If you encounter a vacant campsite with a burning fire after dusk, run as fast as you can back to your tower, and don't look back. So I quickly put out the fire, wrote the citation, and put it on the tent. The air was starting to get heavy with tension, and I could almost feel eyes on me from the shadows. With every step back toward my tower, my pace quickened. The forest seemed to close in around me. Branches seemed to reach out like skeletal fingers. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was following me. The top hat man from Pete's Rules flashed through my mind. Then I felt an imposing presence lurking behind me, getting closer and closer. I then began sprinting for the next half mile, my heart pounding in my chest. I burst through the clearing, the tower looming ahead like a beacon of safety. As I reached the bottom of the steps, a chilling realization swept over me. There was someone behind me. I didn't dare look back. The figure pursued me relentlessly, each footfall echoing in my ears. Adrenaline surged through my veins as I raced up the tower steps, the sound of my own breath drowning out all other noise. I fumbled for the keys, jamming them into the lock, and stumbled inside, slamming the door shut and locking it. My heart thundered in my chest as I leaned against the door, breathless and shaken. Through the windows, I caught a glimpse of the figure, tall, dark, slender, and wearing a top hat. The top hat man stood at the base of the tower, his gaze fixed on me. He didn't move, didn't speak. His presence was suffocating, his eyes empty voids that pierced my soul. I sank to the floor, my mind racing. This was no ordinary encounter. The rules were real, and the rules were more than just cautionary tales. The top hat man was a threat. a tangible, terrifying threat that had chased me down in the darkness. As the minutes ticked by, the figure eventually turned and disappeared into the trees. The forest returned to an uneasy stillness, but the memory of that encounter lingered, a haunting reminder of the darkness that dwelled just beyond the safety of the tower. I clung to the rules, each cryptic phrase now imbued with a chilling significance. The legends were real, and they were my only guide through this treacherous landscape. With every rule I followed, I carved out a path of survival, a path that I knew was only beginning to reveal its true challenges. The next day I wrestled with the urge to try and call Jim for an evacuation. But inside my mind, I knew he would ask why, and I didn't want to sound like a crazy person. I then thought of contacting Stu and ask him if he knew anything about what's been going on, and ask him what he knew about the last ranger, Pete Davidson. But I decided to stick out this coming night, and if anything strange happened again, I'd contact Stu the next morning. As night settled over the landscape, the moon casting a silvery glow through the tower's windows, I lay in bed, my senses heightened by the darkness that enveloped the room. The events of the past few weeks had left me both wary and curious about the mysteries that seemed to seep from the very pores of the forest. I stared at the ceiling, my mind wandering over the rules, the cryptic guideposts that had become my compass in this realm of uncertainty. I had encountered the Top Hat Man before, his presence like a haunting melody that lingered in the air. But what was the Top Hat Man? An entity born from legend, an embodiment of the forest's secrets, or something far more sinister? As the minutes passed, I heard a strange rustling sound from outside the tower. My heart skipped a beat, and I strained my ears, every nerve on edge. The sound grew louder, a steady rhythm of footsteps climbing the tower's steps. Panic surged through me, and I clung to the seventh rule like a lifeline. If you hear something coming up the steps at night, hide under your bed immediately, and don't make a sound. It's the Top Hat Man. He will come in, look around, and then leave. Without hesitation, I slid off the bed, my movements quick and cautious. My breath came in shallow gasps as I crawled beneath the bed, my body hidden in the shadows. The footsteps grew nearer, each one a thud that reverberated through the floorboards. Time seemed to stretch as the footsteps reached the top of the tower. My heart pounded in my chest, the rhythm matching the tempo of my racing thoughts. The room was suffused with an eerie silence, broken only by the sound of my own breath. And then, a creak. The door opened. The air grew colder, a whisper of movement as someone or something entered the room. My fingers curled into the fabric of the rug under the bed as I resisted the urge to peek, my very survival hinging on my adherence to the rule. The footsteps moved closer, each one echoing in the stillness. My heart threatened to burst from my chest as the presence seemed to linger, a weight in the air that pressed down on me. The seconds ticked by, an eternity of uncertainty. I could hear his sinister breathing and crackling as he moved closer to the bed. I could see his feet, which seemed to be hooves. He let out a blood-curdling scream which startled me to my core. He then leaned down closer to the bed, and I could hear him sniffing, as if he was trying to capture my scent. I then saw him kick over my table in a full outrage. And then, as abruptly as it had begun, he left. The creak of the door sounded once more, followed by silence. I lay there, my breath finally steadying, the relief washing over me like a tidal wave. The seventh rule had guided me, protected me from an encounter that held a sense of inevitability. As I emerged from beneath the bed, the room felt different, imbued with the energy of the Top Hat Man's visitation. Had he come for me? Had he sensed my presence, my vulnerability? What would he have done if he did get a hold of me? I sat on the edge of the bed, my mind racing as I considered the implications of what had just transpired. The Top Hat Man had entered my sanctuary, his intentions shrouded in the same darkness that surrounded him. The rules spoke of his arrival, his search, and his departure. But why? What purpose did he serve in this realm of secrets and shadows? As the night deepened, I couldn't shake the feeling that my encounters with the Top Hat Man were far from over. The tower seemed smaller now, the space confined by the weight of the mysteries that clung to its walls. I stared out of the window, the forest beyond a sea of uncertainty. As dawn approached, I knew that the journey was far from complete. The journey was mine to navigate, the rules my compass. And as the first rays of sunlight spilled over the landscape, I felt a renewed determination to unravel the mysteries that had drawn me into their embrace. The next morning, the unsettling encounters with the Top Hat Man remained etched in my mind like a haunting melody. Seeking solace and guidance, I finally decided to confide it in Stu. "Stu, are you there?" I began, my voice wavering slightly. "Yeah, man, I'm here. I need to tell you about something strange I've been experiencing." A brief pause followed before Stu's voice crackled through the radio. "Go ahead, Kyle. What's been going on?" I took a deep breath, trying to put the inexplicable events into words. "I've been seeing things out here. Something came into my tower last night, Stu. Pete Davidson knew about it. He called it the Top Hat Man." There was a moment of silence, and then Stu responded cautiously. "The Top Hat Man? Kyle, you sure you're not letting the isolation get to you?" "I know it sounds crazy, but I've seen him twice now," I insisted, my voice tinged with urgency. Stu's tone softened. "Look, Kyle, I've been out here for years. Sometimes the seclusion messes with your mind. Your imagination starts playing tricks on you." I shook my head, even though he couldn't see me. "Stu, it's more than that. And there's something else. I found this list of rules that seem to correspond to the things I've experienced. Have you ever heard of them?" There was a pause before Stu responded, his voice grave. "Rules? No, Kyle, I've never heard of any rules. And trust me, I've seen and heard some odd things over the years. Maybe it's just an old Ranger's prank or something." "No, they aren't. I found the rules under my mattress my first day here. They were left behind by Pete, and they've kept me safe," I explained, desperation creeping into my words. Stu sighed. "Listen, Kyle, I get that this place can mess with your head, but you can't let it consume you. Keep an eye out, trust your instincts, but don't let paranoia dictate your actions." Frustration and uncertainty mingled within me, but I knew that Stu was trying to offer a lifeline of reason. Before ending the conversation, I asked, "What about Pete? Do you know what happened to him?" Stu's voice grew solemn. "Pete, he went crazy one day, just snapped, abandoned his post and never came back. That's all I know, Kyle." The details were vague, leaving a sense of unease in their wake. Pete's fate only added another layer to the mystery of this place, a mystery I was determined to unravel. But despite the rules, the tower's walls felt increasingly confining, and the urge to seek answers grew stronger within me. One morning, I made a decision. I would venture over to Stu's tower without him knowing and confront the unsettling reality that had become my new normal. The journey through the forest felt different this time. Everything felt peaceful, and the rustling leaves held a comforting familiarity. It was a long 15-mile hike that took all day, up until the late afternoon to reach. As I approached Stu's tower, I noticed the wooden structure standing tall against the backdrop of the wilderness. A sense of unease gripped me. The tower stood before me, a sentinel against the wilderness, but there was something different, something off. The atmosphere was heavy, charged with an energy that hummed like a living entity. I ascended the steps, my breath quickening with every footfall. The door was locked, but I managed to open it easily enough. As I stepped inside, the tower was empty. The radio crackled softly, its static-filled whispers the only sound that punctuated the silence. Inside, the tower felt like a vacuum, void of life and warmth. But as I looked around, my eyes fell on a weathered leather-bound journal lying on the table. With cautious curiosity, I picked it up and began reading. The pages were filled with cramped handwriting. "This is Pete's journal," I said, chronicling his experiences as the ranger before me. My fingers traced the faded words, each entry a window into a reality that mirrored my own. Pete spoke of the Top Hat Man, an entity that had haunted his every step, a figure that existed on the fringes of his senses. Pete's words spoke of fear and desperation, the journal's pages etched with his struggle to comprehend the darkness that lurked just beyond his vision. He wrote of the Top Hat Man's ability to manipulate, to lure, to bend the will of those who dared to cross his path. As I delved deeper into the journal, a chilling revelation emerged. The Top Hat Man had claimed the lives of every ranger before him, a legacy of terror that spanned generations. Pete's entry spoke of a relentless pursuit, of sleepless nights haunted by the entity's presence, and then a glimmer of hope, a discovery that had prolonged Pete's survival. Pete's journal revealed the list of rules once again, but this time there was a 10th rule, the rule that had been torn away from my own list. The 10th rule held a revelation, a weakness of the Top Hat Man, a name that held power over the entity, a name that could banish it back to the shadows from whence it came. My heart raced as I read the name, its syllables like a lifeline of hope in a sea of darkness. Pete's journal spoke of how he had discovered this name, and how it had allowed him to survive for 15 months. The knowledge was both a gift and a burden, a secret that had passed from ranger to ranger in whispered legends. But the journal held more than just knowledge. It held Pete's own account of his struggles, his triumphs, and his downfall. My fingers traced the final entries, the words growing darker as they chronicled Pete's growing paranoia and desperation. And then, a stark revelation. He had discovered that Stu, my mentor, could not be trusted. Pete's words were clear. Stu had betrayed him. Stu had snuck over to his tower one night and stabbed Pete multiple times. Pete wrote how he managed to fight him off and get away, but there wasn't much more in the journal after that. I was stunned, the pieces of the puzzle finally falling into place. Stu's empty tower, Pete's warnings, everything pointed to a truth that was both unsettling and unfathomable. With the journal clutched in my hand, I left the tower, a sense of urgency propelling me forward. I had to find Stu, to confront him about his betrayal, to demand answers to the questions that had plagued me. I found a hatchet sitting on Stu's counter. I grabbed it and clipped it on my hiking bag. I found Stu in a clearing, walking back to his tower, his expression a mix of surprise and wariness as he saw the journal in my hand. "Kyle, what are you doing with that?" I stood before him, my voice steady despite the turmoil within. "Yeah, it's Pete's journal. I know the truth, Stu." Stu's eyes flickered with a mixture of emotions, guilt, and unease warring on his face. "Kyle, you don't understand. It's not what you think. You made a deal with the Top Hat Man," I accused, my voice tinged with anger. "You betrayed your colleagues and lured innocent campers and hikers to their deaths just to save your own ass." Stu's gaze dropped to the ground, his shoulders slumping. "I did what I had to do. You don't understand the fear, the desperation. You're a coward," I spat, my anger igniting like a fire. "You sacrificed others to save yourself." Stu's eyes met mine, and in that moment, I saw a flicker of something darker, a desperation that bordered on madness. "You don't know what it's like out here. You haven't seen or experienced the things I have. You can't comprehend the power of the Top Hat Man." "I don't have to comprehend it to know that you're a traitor," I retorted, my fists clenched at my sides. "What happened to Pete, Stu? Did you kill him? His last journal entry said you stabbed him multiple times. Then nothing was written after that." "Yeah. I killed him. I had to, Kyle. It was either him or me. I killed him and gave him over to the Top Hat Man. Call me what you will, so what? Maybe I am a coward, but I'll do whatever it takes to protect myself, even if it means killing you too." Before I could react, Stu lunged at me with his knife, but I grabbed his hand. Instinct kicked in, and I fought back, adrenaline coursing through my veins. We grappled. I managed to get the knife away from him, a clash of wills and strength, as the forest bore witness to our struggle. Our fight raged on, a symphony of anger and desperation. Stu's face twisted in a mask of fury, and I could see that he was willing to do whatever it took to silence me. With a final burst of energy, I managed to break free, stumbling backward. Stu's breathing was heavy, his expression a mixture of rage and realization. "You can't stop me, Kyle. The Top Hat Man will spare me and you'll be just another victim." I took a step back, my voice steady as I faced him. "You're wrong, Stu. I know the name that can banish the Top Hat Man." Stu's face contorted with rage and defeat, his resolve crumbling before my eyes. "You're a fool, Kyle. You're playing with forces you can't comprehend. It's not going to work, Kyle. It's a myth." With that, I turned and fled, the forest stretching before me like a labyrinth of shadows. Stu's cries of frustration echoed behind me, his desperate voice fading as I ran. The sun began its descent, path ahead seemed both endless and promising, a journey that would lead me deeper into the heart of the mysteries that had woven their way into my existence. The legends, the rules, they were a tapestry of survival, and I was determined to unravel their threads, to confront the entity, and to reclaim the tower that had become both my sanctuary and my battleground. The moon hung low in the obsidian sky, casting an eerie glow over the forest that seemed to accentuate the shadows lurking between the trees. In the stillness of the night, Stu moved with a sinister purpose, his heart a tumultuous mixture of determination and fear. His steps were cautious as he approached the clearing, the moonlight painting an otherworldly canvas before him. Stu's hands trembled, the weight of the knife he clutched echoing the gravity of his intentions. He had chosen this night, this moment, to end the chapter of Kyle Brooks once and for all. The tower, a looming silhouette against the night, beckoned to him like a siren's call. As he neared Kyle's tower, his heart pounded in his chest, the sound of its rhythm echoing in his ears. His breath came in ragged bursts, his mind a vortex of desperation and resolve. His grip tightened on the knife, its blade glinting in the moonlight. But fate had other plans, plans that twisted the narrative in ways Stu could never have foreseen. As he stepped closer to the tower, a sound, a faint rustling, reached his ears, halting him in his tracks. He turned, his eyes scanning the darkness, his heart seizing with a mixture of anticipation and dread. And then, emerging from the shadows like a phantom, a figure appeared. Its tall, looming figure made Stu's breath catch in his throat, a cold sweat breaking out across his brow. The very entity that had consumed his thoughts, his fears now stood before him, an embodiment of darkness and malevolence. Stu's hands trembled, the knife slipping from his grasp and thudding against the forest floor. His voice wavered, his plea escaping in a choked whisper. "No, please." The top hat man's presence seemed to loom larger, a chilling reminder of the power it held. Stu's sobs were a symphony of desperation, a melody that hung in the air like a dirge. His voice quivered, his words a haunting plea that carried his fear into the night. "I know I failed you," Stu sobbed, his voice cracking with emotion. "But give me another chance. Please let me redeem myself in your eyes." Its gaze remained fixed on Stu, an inscrutable observer to this display of terror and desperation. Stu's cries grew louder, his voice filled with the weight of regret and despair. His pleas were a tapestry of emotion, woven with threads of fear and hope. As Stu's sobs echoed through the clearing, it moved closer, his form a mere shadow against the moonlight. Stu fell to his knees, his body trembling as he faced the entity that had haunted his nightmares. Tears streamed down his face, mingling with his sobs. And then, the unthinkable. It bent down, his face mere inches from Stu's. Stu's breath hitched, his terror escalating as the entity's presence enveloped him. His tears flowed freely, mingling with the dirt and leaves beneath him. In the moonlight, Stu's face was a canvas of vulnerability, his plea etched into every feature. He was a broken man, his facade of bravado shattered by the reality of his own mortality. The entity's silence was deafening, its intent unfathomable. And then, with a swift, almost casual movement, it reached out and gripped Stu's throat. Stu's gasp was swallowed by the night as his hands clawed at the entity's fingers, his struggle futile against its strength. Stu's cries turned to gurgles, his eyes wide with terror as its grip tightened. The entity's form seemed to shift and contort, its presence an inky void that threatened to consume him. Stu's body convulsed, his vision blurring as he fought against the inevitable. And then, in a grotesque display of violence, it sank its teeth into Stu's face. The night was pierced by a guttural scream, a symphony of agony and horror that echoed through the trees. The forest bore witness to this gruesome tableau. Stu's struggle grew weaker, his cries diminishing into strangled gasps. Its grip on Stu's throat remained unrelenting, its intent clear. And then, with a final brutal movement, he ripped Stu's head from his body, a spray of blood painting the forest floor. And as the moon continued its journey through the night sky, the tower stood as a silent witness to the horrors that had unfolded. The Top Hat Man, sated in its own macabre way, had once again retreated into the shadows, leaving behind a chilling reminder of its power. The moon hung high in the sky, its silvery light casting an eerie glow over the clearing as I stood at the threshold of the tower. The journal clutched tightly in my hand, my heart pounded with a mixture of trepidation and determination. The time had come to confront this entity, armed with the knowledge of the 10th rule, the entity's weakness. As I stepped outside, the forest seemed to hold its breath, the air charged with an unsettling energy. Its presence was like a weight on my shoulders, a reminder of the darkness that had claimed lives before mine. But I was resolute, my grip on the journal a lifeline to the truth that had been hidden for so long. The moments that followed were a blur of preparation, candles flickering to life, casting dancing shadows on the walls of the tower. The journal's pages spread before me like a map through the unknown. The 10th rule etched into my memory, resonated within me, a mantra that guided my steps. With the forest surrounding me, I took a deep breath, my heart steadying with each inhale. The wind whispered through the trees as if carrying the secrets of generations past. The tower stood as a beacon of hope, its windows like watchful eyes that had seen the battles between light and darkness. And then, in the distance, a presence, a shadow that seemed to materialize from the very fabric of the night. The top hat man emerged, his form an embodiment of malevolence, his gaze fixed on me with a chilling intent. I steeled myself, the journal's revelations echoing in my mind. As he moved closer, I raised my voice, each word a weapon infused with the power of the 10th rule. "Malachi," I called out, the name resonating through the clearing like a command. The air crackled with tension as the entity's form flickered, its presence faltering in the face of my defiance. My heart raced, a mixture of fear and resolve coursing through my veins. The battle that ensued was a dance of shadows, a clash of wills and strength that echoed through the clearing. I exploited the entity's weakness, each saying of his name weakening it further. The forest seemed to hold its breath, the tension building as his form faltered. And then, with a final burst of determination, I channeled the energy of the 10th rule, the name that held power over the entity. "Malachi," I repeated, my voice unwavering. Its form twisted and contorted, its grip on reality slipping as it recoiled from my words. With a guttural growl, the entity retreated, its form dissipating like smoke carried away by the wind. The clearing seemed to exhale, the tension dissipating as quickly as it had come. But I was not done. I was driven by a need to unravel the mysteries that had plagued this forest. Armed with the knowledge from the journal, the rules, and the 10th rule, I ventured deeper into the heart of the forest. The air grew thick with a sense of foreboding, each step echoing with the weight of generations of fear and darkness. And then, I found it, the lair of the top hat man. As I entered the lair, the scene before me was a tableau of horror. Hundreds of decaying corpses and skeletal remains strewn across the ground, a testament to the entity's reign of terror. The air was heavy with the stench of death, a chilling reminder of the lives that had been lost to its power. But I pressed on, my heart a mixture of terror and determination. The lair was a maze of shadows and decay, a reflection of the darkness that had consumed the top hat man's existence. And then, there he was, the entity itself, a figure of evil and dread that stood before me. I raised my voice, each word an invocation of the 10th rule, a weapon against the darkness. "Malachi," I called out, the name a beacon of power. His form flickered, its grip on reality faltering as it recoiled from the power of its own weakness. "Malachi," I repeated, my voice a force of light against the darkness, its presence fading like a dying ember. And then in a burst of ethereal light it was gone, leaving behind only the echoes of its malevolence. I stood there, panting, my heart still racing in the aftermath of the battle. The lair was a haunting reminder of the darkness that had plagued this forest for generations. The forest seemed to sigh in relief, the tension dissipating as if a weight had been lifted. But I was not unscathed. My body ached, my mind reeling from the horrors I had witnessed. With a determined resolve, I retraced my steps, leaving the lair behind. The moon hung low in the sky, its light casting a pallid glow over the clearing as I emerged from the heart of darkness. And as the first light of dawn painted the horizon, I stumbled back to the tower, my steps unsteady, my body weary. I reached for the CB radio, my voice trembling as I called for help. Jim's voice crackled through the static, a lifeline connecting me to the world beyond the forest. I recounted the harrowing tale, the battles waged in the shadows, the horrors that had been unveiled. And as I spoke, I felt a mixture of exhaustion and relief. Relief that the Top Hat Man's reign of terror had come to an end, that the forest could finally find its peace. Jim's voice was a reassuring presence, a reminder that I was not alone in this struggle. He assured me that help was on the way, that the nightmare was coming to an end. As I waited for the rescue that would pull me from the depths of darkness, I looked out at the forest, the clearing, the tower, a landscape forever marked by the battles that had been fought between light and shadow. The next morning, the rescue team finally arrived at the tower. As we landed on the ranger station helipad, I was greeted by Jim. I stood there, a mixture of exhaustion and relief coursing through my veins as I recounted the tale of the battles fought against the darkness, the horror that had unfolded. Jim listened, his expression a blend of sadness and anger, his gaze fixed on the journal that had chronicled the nightmare. Jim said, "Let's go inside." As we entered, he sat down at his desk and begins reading Pete's old journal. As Jim read Pete's journal, his emotions flickered across his face like shadows dancing on a wall. The weight of what he was reading settled into his being, a heavy burden that seemed to envelop him. Pete's words were a haunting reminder of the entity's power, of the lives that had been lost, and about Stu's betrayal, how he killed Pete to save his own skin. When he finally looked up, his eyes met mine, a mixture of sorrow and anger in their depths. He was haunted by what he had learned, by the truth that had been unveiled. We stood there for a moment, a silent understanding passing between us, a shared experience that had forged a bond stronger than words. The days that followed were a mixture of somber tasks. With heavy hearts, we set out to find Stu. In a clearing near my tower, we found his body. His head was about 15 feet from the rest of him. But regardless of what he did, he was still a ranger, and his family had to know about his death. We contacted Stu's family, delivering the news that no one should ever have to hear. The grief was palpable, a reminder that the darkness had claimed yet another life. And as we stood there, surrounded by the echoes of loss, the realization that our journey was far from over settled into our hearts. The park held a ceremony, a solemn gathering to honor the rangers and civilians who had been lost to the forest's secrets. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the weight of memories and the echoes of their stories. The forest seemed to mourn alongside us, a silent witness to the lives that had been touched by the darkness. A memorial was erected, a testament to the sacrifices that had been made. The names of the lost rangers and hikers were etched into stone, a reminder that their legacy would not be forgotten. The clearing, once a battleground of shadows, now held a sense of reverence, a place where their spirits could find solace. In the aftermath of the battles, Jim made a decision that would shape the future. He promoted me, recognizing the strength and resilience I had shown in the face of unimaginable horrors. And as I accepted the responsibility, a new chapter began, one where I would become a mentor to other rangers, passing down the knowledge and the lessons that had been hard-earned. Life went on, but the memories of the battles lingered, like ghosts that refused to be forgotten. The forest held secrets, some of which would never be fully revealed. As I sat inside my tower one night, lost in my own thoughts, a call came in. From the new ranger, Dylan Jacobs, reporting knocks and scratches on his window by his bed. I was frozen in fear for a few seconds. Then I grabbed the handle and said, "You heard what?" I'm Mr.Night-Terror, your host, and I thank you for watching and experiencing this story with me. Remember to like and subscribe to my channel, as I will be narrating many more scary stories in the upcoming days. If you have an idea of a story you would like me to narrate, please leave a request and description in the comments. And as always, stay scared, my friends.